Chauncey, aka Karima, Great Man of God Media, back at you with another GMOG Media update. Real quick, as you know, I told you guys about a month ago that my hard drive recently crashed, and I'm coming across random videos that I find I'm able to salvage. I found another video out the archives I want to share with you guys. Anytime I find something that's pertinent that I recorded the last 2-3 years, I'm going to share it. So this video here is from 2014. This is the last video I recorded of Dr. Umar Johnson. He was in West Palm Beach, Florida, at a school called Suncoast High School. And this is the last video footage I recorded of Dr. Umar Johnson. Now, a brief history about Dr. Umar Johnson and myself. I worked with him, a few times before. And, when I first met him back in 2013, everything was great. Met him down here for a lecture. You can go back to my old channel where I interviewed him in Miami. And after that, work with him, trying to bring him down back here to do lectures, stuff like that. Things went awry when I tried to bring him down or help him bring him down for a lecture. He was scheduled to do a lecture down in Miami in 2014, and things went south. I'm not gonna get into the details of that because I'm well past that story. But things went south, and basically it severed ties for us doing business together as far as him coming down doing lectures with my company. So that was that. We just went south and let bygones be bygones. But this video here is the last video that I recorded of Dr. Umar Johnson when he was in South Florida. Regardless of how you feel about him, he is a powerful speaker. Okay, regardless of how you feel about the school, I'm in support of this school, but again, we have needs here in South Florida that are a lot more privy than what he's trying to do for his school. His school is his school, but we got important issues where I live that need to be taken care of. So so family, this is the video of Dr. Umar Johnson, my last video footage of me recording him, okay, in South Florida. And just wanted to share with you guys because this is footage that I'm pulling off my old hard drive, saving and archiving things that I find across the hard drive. Like, this is the hard drive right here I'm talking about. That crashed right here, okay? 2 terabyte drive. And luckily, I have a hot swappable hard drive deck on my custom built PC, so I can just put it in here, pull up the files from the software, and try to get some more files, because I had to do a write 0 on this hard drive and pull files that were unrecognizable and then try to play them to see if they work. So that's what I was doing with this thing right here. So that's it, family. The video is about a little over an hour long, but important information is in the video. I believe he talks about Ferguson and some other things in the video, but overall, like I said, he's a powerful speaker, family. Regardless of how you feel about him, there's some things, of course, that I don't agree with, but at the end of the day, he's a powerful speaker. So you can't go wrong with that. Anyway, family, Chauncey, aka Karima, Great Man of God Media, signing out. Enjoy the video. Peace.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
I want to thank everyone for coming out. I'm going to go ahead and get started because I understand we have the facilities until 8 o'clock. So what I plan to do is present for roughly 45 minutes and then get into a 45-minute dialogue with all of you so you can express your opinions and thoughts and solutions for what we can do to save our young black males, particularly from miseducation. But as we see so much now, particularly with the situation in Ferguson, Missouri, not only do we have to save them from miseducation, we now have to save them from extermination by the people who are supposed to protect them. There was a statistic that was put out on USA Today a couple days ago, and they said since 2006, America's police have been killing 2 black males every week since 2006. So that's about 8 years consecutively of 2 black boys being murdered by the police. I'm going to be going down to Ferguson. I was requested to come and try to put some organization to the protest. Obviously, we don't want people being hurt, and we don't want people hurting others. But at the same time, we have to recognize the importance of resistance. As my ancestor Frederick Douglass said, you must agitate, agitate, agitate. So I'm not one to say that everyone should go home, because that's a strategy by the injustice system to kill the movement and to drown it. So by the time they get around to the court case for the officer who actually shot the young brother, it will be in no one's consciousness, which would allow them to get off easy. So I'm not a supporter of that type of resolution, because that's not a resolution. But there are some things that can be done a lot better and a lot safer to bring power to the structure. And some of the things that we need. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Dr. Umar Johnson. I am an elementary school principal in Pennsylvania. I am also a school psychologist. I'm also a doctor of clinical psychology, and I'm also trained as a political scientist. I did all my work in Pennsylvania colleges, Millersville University, Lehigh University, and the Philadelphia College of Osteopathic Medicine. My expertise is in evaluating, educating, diagnosing, and helping African American children, particularly the boys. And when I speak of African American boys, we can lump Latino American boys in there, because we know that most of our Latino American boys are also of direct African ancestry. The only difference between most African American boys and Latino American boys is language. That's it. From a cultural and an ancestral perspective, they are just as black as the rest of us. Interesting, because we're celebrating 100 years of Garveyism, the movement that was founded by the Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey. And it's interesting because Cuba and Puerto Rico, and my paternal great-grandfather was a Spanish-speaking Cuban, but Cuba and Puerto Rico were two of the most thoroughly organized Marcus Garvey islands in the Caribbean, and two of the most thoroughly organized Marcus Garvey countries in the world. So you had more red, black, and green flags in Cuba and Puerto Rico flying back in 1920 than almost in any other place. But it's amazing how almost 100 years later, we've lost that connection, and we've allowed others to come in from the outside and divide us based on language and skin color, when we're all basically the same people. Saving black boys, something that's very, very important to me, very, very important to you all. A couple of things I want to go over as it relates to that. Number one, for parents, school is starting back up. It's very important to understand that you are your child's number one advocate. It is your responsibility to protect your son from miseducation, from unnecessary ADHD referrals, and from ridiculous psychiatric medication. And I'm going to say ridiculous. I can say that because as a psychologist, I work with dozens of boys, including white boys and Arab and East Indian young men who are also being put on these dangerous psychiatric meds. And what I find so perplexing about the psychiatric war against black boys is that 9 out of every 10 African American and Latino boys that are referred for psychological evaluation to determine if they have this so-called ADHD thing are being referred almost exclusively off of the complaint of females. Almost exclusively off of the complaint of mom and female teacher. And I'm saying this for a reason, because I want us to see that there's a gender bias that goes into the diagnosing of ADHD. It's almost exclusively a female-generated enterprise. Am I saying that to pick on the mothers and the teachers? Of course not, okay? Of course not, particularly in our community. So many of our children are being raised by single-parent mothers. We support them. Most of our teachers are females. We support them as well. But that doesn't mean we can't discuss issues of bias that are critical to the miseducation of black boys. In other words, African American boys are struggling in Palm Beach schools, Chicago schools, Detroit schools, Pennsylvania schools, where I am. But of course it's going to be different in my school, because there's certain things I'm just not going to go for. I'm not going to allow teachers to tell parents that children need medicine. Number one, it's illegal. Number two, it's outside of their area of competence and training. That won't happen in my school, but I'm a different type of a principal, okay? Parents won't be coming into the school begging for special education so they can get an SSI check. That's not going to happen in my school. But I'm a certain type of a principal. But what I want everyone to understand is that this miseducation war with black boys is largely the result of a disconnection between the black boy and America's public education environment. In other words, schools are largely ran or populated by female teachers. And I think it's safe to say, for those of us who are not in denial, in understanding that most of those teachers are something other than African American, that with that gender bias comes a racial bias. So when we talk about the problems of African American boys, we have to conceptualize it the right way. We have to conceptualize it the right way. It's not a problem with black boys learning. That's not the issue. It's a problem with black boys being forced to learn under psychologically challenging circumstances that dictate to him that he has to perform like a female and a white female in order to be educated successfully. The black boy is not a female and he's not white. He comes from a particular cultural milieu. And when we talk about cultural differences, we're not talking biologics here. I want to be clear. I believe that the African American child can learn just like the white child can. And I think too much is made over the differences of the races as it relates to learning biologically. But culturally, there's differences. African American culture is a very rhythmic culture. It values collective participation. It does not value individual pursuit and competition, which is something that is valued in America's school systems. If you compare American school systems with traditional African school systems, you'll see they're very different. In traditional African school systems, you're looking for success for the entire group that is expected to learn individually, but they're also expected to help each other grow collectively. American public schools is totally different. That's why there's so much emphasis on standardized testing. The reason they test our children so much is not to see if they're learning. That's not the purpose of testing. And if you disagree, you need to get you a good book on the history of tests and measurements in America. No Child Left Behind, which has failed, was not put in place to make sure children learn. It was put in place to justify why some did not. It was put in place to justify a lack of resources and exclusion of opportunity. The first tests in America were used to do what? The first IQ tests were used to determine who would fight in the world of wars and who would not. Who was deemed too intelligent to have their life risked at the front line of armed combat, and who was deemed to be not so intelligent and thusly an expendable body. All of the IQ tests that we use, and I can speak on this because I'm an expert in my field, and I help standardize many of the tests that we use. Most of our IQ tests were the brainchilds of America's racists. If you don't believe me, Google intelligence tests, and then Google the name of the founders of these tests. Many of these tests were created by men who advocated the extermination of African American people. It's important that you know this. It's important that you know that the founder of the SAT test, Carl Brigham, was a staunch racist who advocated the extermination of African life. That's where the SAT came from. The Stanford-Binet intelligence test, that's where it came from. You need to know this, because too much is being made of the black-white test gap. The black-white test gap. Why are the Asians and the Europeans consistently outperforming the African American and Latinos? And many of my colleagues in the world of education and in the world of psychology still endorse the same old played out reasons for why we have a test gap. Most of us are familiar with the Bell Curve book, which was one of the top selling books all time in America. A book based on scientific racism. A book whose premise was that African Americans are intellectually inferior to whites was one of the top selling books in American history. I'm saying that because if you think the belief in African inferiority is only espoused by a few, You're wrong. It is a dominant trend in American society. In fact, American history is based on the belief of the inferiority of the African. So I ask you, when your child's teacher comes to school, does he or she come free from that bias? And does that bias affect how well they interact with your child? I had professional development with my teachers last week, and I made it clear to them that in this school, we will not blame poverty if our children don't learn. In this school, we will not blame incarcerated fathers and single-parent mothers if our children don't learn. In this school, we will not look to put kids in special ed because you can't teach. I wanted to get the expectations out right from the beginning. Because in too many of America's schools, teachers are allowed to get away with saying, well, he's poor, black, loves hip-hop, and his father's locked up, and that's an excuse for him not to learn. It happens all over the country. I've spoken in nearly every school district in the country, definitely every state, and I see the same thing state by state. And that's why a couple of months ago, I visited a historically black college in Lawrenceville, Virginia. Some of you might know it, St. Paul's College. Opened by a formerly enslaved African, James Solomon Russell, a friend of Booker T. Washington. I went down there and met with the president, toured the campus, met with the realty company. And for those of you who follow my work, you know we're in the middle of a fundraiser to acquire that college. Why? With all these schools in America, why do we need another one? Because these schools in America are not preparing African American children to deal with the realities of American racism and to succeed against those odds. Schools are telling our children, get a good education, become a decent citizen, and everything will go well for you. But we know that not to be the case because we have over 2 million African Americans in this country with bachelor's and master's degrees who cannot find a livable wage job. So simply preparing African American children for college is a strategy that has failed. Our schools have to prepare our children to be economically independent and successful straight from high school, whether they go to college or not. Now, for children who want to go to college, we should support that. If your child wants to be a doctor, a lawyer, a teacher, an engineer, we should help them get there. My school will be college prep, but it will be more than college prep. And my biggest criticisms of America's schools, public, private, parochial, and charter, is they're only preparing our children to get accepted into a college. That's not enough because colleges are businesses. I know some of us get real happy when we see the newspaper articles about certain schools that graduate 100% of their black boys and 100% of their black boys get accepted into college. Some of y'all applaud that, and I don't see anything wrong with applauding that, but I don't. Because I know most of them will get into college because the college wants their money. So I'm not impressed with a 100% college acceptance rate. Someone will take you because they want your money. And we have to stop falling for this propaganda that says because they got in, the high school succeeded. I don't determine a succeeding high school by how many graduated. I determine a succeeding high school by how many finished on time and are now making a decent living. That's why most school districts do not keep long-term research on their high school graduates. Have you noticed that? There's almost no long-term research on special education. Why is there almost no long-term research on special ed? No long-term research on children who graduate from high-performing high schools? Because when we track the data later, we see that those high schools wasn't as high-performing as we thought. It's difficult to pull that on me because I test the children. So I'll walk into the school and say, since you're doing so good, give me 5 of your best children and let me do an independent assessment and let's see if what you're reporting to the newspapers is the truth. A lot of what you read in the paper is propaganda. Are some of those schools achieving well? Yes. We do have some excellent schools in America, ran by black and white. But you have to be able to evaluate the school yourself to determine if this is a good job of educating or a good job of projecting a false notion of success. So anyway, today I found out that St. Paul's College in Lawrenceville, Virginia is willing to entertain a lease purchase agreement from me in the national movement to save black boys, which I'm hoping they accept because it will give us an opportunity to get into that school sooner. My vision for my school is residential. I don't want them coming home except for weekends and vacations and so forth, because for me, education is not a 7-hour-a-day function. The average child in America spends 10% of their childhood in school. That's not enough time for me to do what I need to get done. Furthermore, on top of educating African American children, our boys in particular, because we're going to start off with the boys and then we're going to add the girls in later with the Amy Garvey and Anna Douglas Academy for the Young Ladies. I need to have those boys more than 7 hours. I need them about 16 hours. Because education is much more than literacy. And unfortunately, No Child Left Behind and Reach to Achieve and all these other federal initiatives that are politically motivated, not academically motivated, are all about literacy. Reading and math, very important. Reading and math are the building blocks of other skills, but just because a child can read and count, that doesn't end the education. So at the Frederick Douglass and Marcus Garvey Academy, we're going to have agricultural and agronomical science. We're going to have political and military science. We're going to have economic and financial science, which is a very important science. Because the top 1% richest Americans never went to college and make more money than the bottom half. If you know money, you don't need college. If you know money, you don't need college. How many of us went to college to only find out later that there was a better hustle waiting for you? Had I known this before I went to college, I might have never went. I come across people who do this all the time. You know how to successfully trade stock and bond. You know how to save money and flip it into business. If you can master real estate, you don't need college. And so by the time your child is done 9th grade in my school, they'll know how to do their own taxes and anybody else's at 14 years old. At 15, they will have mastered the real estate market in the state where they live. At 15. At 16, they will have mastered international trading. Stocks, bonds, mutual funds, investments, as well as resource investments. Gas, oil, gold, diamond, etc. At 16 years old. At 17 years old, they will have a business plan that they will be able to take into any bank and get a loan to start their business the day after high school, not 4 years after collegiate miseducation. For those who don't want college, for those who want it, we will ensure that they go and we will ensure that they will be successful. We will also teach them the science of black community organization and development, because we don't have community. Community is common unity. We have hoods and residential areas. But community implies that we're working together with a collective purpose. We have an issue with that. And then another piece that we're going to give our children, which you can't give in public school, respectfully and understandably, and that is African spirituality. That is a part of who we are as a people. We have grown too materialistic. We have drank too much of America's culture, and we have forgotten what we stand for and what we are about. We are not a materialistic people. We are not a bling bling people. We are not, let me look better than every other black woman, let me look better than every other black man people. We are not that type of a people, but we've lost our way, and it's time to get back on track. So when we're done here tonight, I hope that you go home, and I hope that you go to the website for the fundraiser, drumarjohnsonschool.com, drumarjohnsonschool.com, and you make a donation. Because it ain't for me. I have my 6 degrees, I'm fine. It's for our children. It's for our children. That young man who was murdered in Ferguson, had he been at FDMG, it may have never happened because we would have never even allowed that situation to take place. Pants won't sag. There will be no weed and blunts and all that other stuff. so no police officer can use an excuse to take the life of an African child. Some of you might be interested in working at the Frederick Douglass Marcus Garvey Academy, which will be an independent school. It will not be public and it will not be charter, because I don't want the state or the local school board dictating to me what is in the best interest of African children. I've gotten the request for charters. Come and open up a charter in my school district. I would never give you that type of power over what I'm about to do. Charter schools are alternative public schools, and I don't need their oversight. I want to be free. And being free comes with a price tag of $2 million for St. Paul's. But brothers and sisters, that college will be perfect for what our young men need. 137 acres. Gymnasium, dormitories, lecture halls, cafeterias, infirmary, all the land we need for a fish farm, all the land we need for an agricultural farm, all the land we need for our own fruit and vegetable weekend store or shop. I want the school to be economically self-sufficient, so we get to a point where the school will pay for itself because we have so many industries. We want to turn one of the dorms into a hotel for our young men and women who are interested in the hotel and the travel industry. We can train them on that right there on campus. If you're interested in working at the school, send me your resume to fdmgresumes@gmail.com. F for Frederick, D for Douglas, M for Marcus, G for Garvey. fdmgresumes with an S @gmail.com. We need math teachers, we need science, we need history, we need language. I'm looking for individuals who are proficient in African language, because I want to teach our children at least 3 different African languages before we give them another European tongue. I take issue with schools, even African-centered schools, who will give an African child another European tongue before they give them an African tongue. You're teaching them how to speak Greek, but there's more Nigerians in Nigeria who speak Igbo than there are people of Greek origin in the world. So why are they learning Greek over Igbo? Because of racism. And the assumption is, if you're going to be successful in business, 9 times out of 10, you won't be doing business with someone who speaks Igbo, or Zulu, or Twi, or Zolof, or Swahili. We're going to change that. Furthermore, the cognitive research shows us what? That children who learn multiple languages, the younger that language is introduced, the higher their IQ tends to end up becoming. There's a theory that when a child is bilingual or multilingual, because we want our children to be multilingual, they can access portions of the brain that aren't normally accessed. More languages equals a higher IQ. That's the correlation that we're seeing in the research from America's dominant universities. But in addition to teachers, we need security, we need secretaries, social workers, counselors, bus drivers, stock persons, building engineers. So don't just think about being a teacher. What can you offer our children? And if it's something positive and something that is African-centered, because we coming from an African-centered framework. You can be Christian, but we coming from an African-centered framework. You can be Muslim, but we coming from an African-centered framework. I just want to make sure you're clear that we won't be teaching your religion. We will be teaching history and culture. Parents can teach them what to believe. And black folk, we spend too much time teaching our kids what to believe without preparing them to achieve. So that's what I'm working on. Make your donation. What are some things you need to know for this school year starting up? Number 1, you need to know that getting your child evaluated for special education might be a life or death decision. And you need to know that you need to stop and think before you give the school permission to evaluate your child. Why? Because the diagnoses that we school psychologists give out, most of them cannot be objectively proven to exist. The learning disability is a professional opinion. It is not a fact. ADHD, ain't no daddy at home disorder. Ain't no daddy at home disorder. It's a professional opinion, not a fact. Conduct disorder, emotional disturbance, and this thing that's so popular, this mild mental retardation, which is now called intellectual disability. That's an opinion too. A black boy in America, 4 times as likely as a European American boy to be diagnosed as mild intellectual disability. Do you know why our boys are being diagnosed so much with mild intellectual disability? It's the same reason we got this black-white test gap. Let me break it down because I want it to make sense to you. The IQ test has 5 scales on it. 5. Working memory, how well a child can hold information in their mind and execute upon it. Processing speed, how quickly a child can complete a task. Nonverbal reasoning, how well a child can solve a novel problem for which they've received no prior education. Working memory is universal. Black, white, or Asian, you do equally well. Processing speed, universal. Black, white, or Asian, you do equally well. Nonverbal reasoning, universal. Black, white, or Asian, children do equally well. But there's one left. And this one scale accounts for the 15-point black-white test gap. And this one scale also accounts for why black boys have an exaggerated mild intellectual disability rate. And it's called verbal comprehension. VCI, verbal comprehension. That's where the racial bias is. Verbal comprehension is the scale that accounts for the words and concepts that come out of a middle-class European American households and culture. Has nothing to do with how smart you are, by the way. Only how well-versed you are in the native culture and language. After all, every IQ test is standardized on middle-class white children by middle-class white people. So in the test, white privilege is built in the test. And because the tests are not predominantly standardized on black children, we participate in the sample, but the majority is the white children with a small sampling of black children, so racism is built in the test. And because black children don't necessarily understand the concepts that white people use, they end up looking mentally retarded when they're not. Let me give you an example. Your son got an 81 composite score on working memory. Low average, we want it to be high, but he's not deficient. And then he got an 82 on processing speed. Low average, we want it to be higher, but not deficient. And then he got an 85 on nonverbal reasoning scale of the IQ test. Low average, we want it to be higher, but not deficient. And then on the verbal comprehension scale, he got a 51 because he don't understand the words and concepts of middle-class white America. So when these numbers go in together, we get the overall IQ score, which is known as a full-scale IQ, FSIQ. When you say my child has an IQ score of 110, you're only talking about one score of 5. You're talking about the overall IQ. But what you fail to realize is that overall IQ score comes from 4 separate scores, and one of them is racist, and that's verbal comprehension. Now, best practice in psychology says what? If I evaluate a child, particularly one who's culturally different, and he gets an overall IQ score of a 65, which potentially can lead to him being diagnosed as mentally retarded, I have to look at the scores that went into the overall. So the overall is a 65, he got 4 scores. Let me look at them. He got an 81, 82, 83, 51. Now the science of psychology says what? Because that 51 pulled down the overall score significantly, I can't use the overall score. Practice says if one of those 4 composites is significantly different from the others, you can't use the overall. What am I saying? I'm saying that the psychologist should have put in his report that even though Raheem came up with a 65 IQ, this IQ is inaccurate, can't be used, is not reliable because Raheem had low average in the other 3 domains. And this score right here is an outlier. It is significantly different, which means the overall IQ score can't be used, and as the psychologist, in my professional opinion, because Raheem's other 3 scores are clearly low average, we can conclude that this young man's IQ score is at least low average. But that's not what school psychologists are doing in Palm Beach, because that's not what they're doing anywhere else. They're taking that 65 and they're interpreting it as it is. And they're giving you a report telling you your child is mentally retarded when they're just as intelligent as everybody else. Stop getting your children tested when you know their problem is you. Stop getting your children tested when you know he can't read because in your house, homework doesn't exist. Stop getting your children tested when you know the reason he's not learning is because you don't even make sure he goes to school on time. Stop getting your children tested when you know he's being raised to believe he's the next Donovan McNabb or Michael Vick or Michael Jordan or LeBron James. And for my fathers, I'm going to challenge you on that, because we allow too many of our boys to grow up thinking they're going to have a comfortable millionaire lifestyle because of their athletic talent. You're setting your son up for poverty and crime, because most of our boys will not go professional. Only 1% of all high school athletes will go professional. I don't care how good he is in Palm Beach. When he gets to New York City and Chicago, he's nothing. And it's the same thing I tell the boys in New York and Chicago. When you get to Houston and LA, you're just another one of them. Only a few will be standouts. Too many of us are socializing our children for failure. Oh, I don't have to do my work because and you got to make sure the school isn't giving your child a pass on learning because they're good at athletics. Too many principals succumb to the pressure of winning by allowing children who should be in study hall, not on the football field, to stay on the football field because it helps the school look good. And because my African-American community is only worried about football games and not people's futures, I'm gonna let them play because that's how I stay popular. Not in my school. You fail a class, you don't play, I don't care how good you think you are. Because I know them sports are not what's gonna carry you in life. I grew up in North Philadelphia. We had a lot of standout athletes. Marvin Harrison, wide receiver for the Colts. Rasheed Wallace, who won the world title with the Detroit Pistons. John Thornton, my high school roommate, who ended up being on the Tennessee Titans Super Bowl team back in 2000. Ron Murray from Strawberry Mansion High School. I know a lot of these guys, but Philadelphia is a city of 2 million, and I only know about a dozen who got rich off of it. And guess what? The ones who got rich, a lot of them wasn't even thought to be the best athletes. So please stop selling that pipe dream to your child. They're going to have to work hard. And you're going to have to discipline that young man with the what? The ability to control himself. You see what these police are using as the justification? A lack of emotional control. Mothers, do a better job on this. I understand the whole female stereotype of being emotional, but you're raising a son and you got to teach him not to be. It'll cost him his life. The black boy in American society is considered a criminal whether he's 3 or 33. And you better understand that. And you say, well, I think that's a drastic statement. Oh, really? Have you looked at the latest United States Department of Education Office of Civil Rights study on school discipline? That showed black preschool boys between the age of 3 and 5 have one of the highest school suspension rates in the country. They are suspending 3 and 4 and 5-year-olds like they grown men. Expelling them from school. What can a 5-year-old child do to get kicked out of school forever at 5? And you say, Dr. Umar, why do we need our own schools? The proof is in front of your face. And then they'll find one high-achieving school and say, look, the school district isn't failing. Look, we got one school that's doing it right because that's the only one you worry about. I know those games. They did it back in the school district of Philadelphia. They do it all over the country when I travel. They will engineer 2 or 3 successful schools to to be the alibi for the 20 that failed. So they can say it ain't the school district, it's the parents, because in these 3 schools, all the kids are doing well, but you ain't telling nobody that those are special admission schools where the principals handpick who the hell would go. Or you go find some high achieving charter where they handpick kids too and say, look, well, if it's the school's fault, why is this charter school doing better than most of the public schools in the area? Because they're picking their students and you know it, but you're not going to say anything because it protects your job. I know this. That's why I want to cut through the baloney and build our own school. So I want to give you 10 commandments to take with you for the school year. Number 1, don't get your child tested unless you believe fervently that they have a problem. If you know why that child ain't learning, take ownership as mother and father and help your child learn. Every parent is a homeschooling parent, whether you want to be or not. That's right, when your child comes home from school, they get another schooling in your house. In my school, homework 5 days a week. You're off on the weekends, not during the week. How you taking a break before you even learned anything? Make sure your child do homework. Every one of you should have a dictionary in your house, a thesaurus in your house, and a set of encyclopedia. A dictionary, a thesaurus, and a set of encyclopedia, so when a child needs to know how to spell a word, you don't give him the answer, you make him go find it himself. Oh, I don't know how to spell this. Here's the dictionary, find it. Teach them to value the hard work. Oh, well, you could just go on the internet and look it up. You got to do a book report on Harriet Tubman? Just Google one and change the name. That's what y'all doing now. You're letting your child use the internet as a conduit for their learning. And teachers are letting them do it too, which I find to be so trifling. Internet assignment. You can't validate nothing in the internet. That doesn't teach you how to do research. And when you go to college, you got to learn how to do research the old-fashioned way, because they're only going to let you use a couple of internet sources because they're not valid or reliable most of the time. Well, Dr. Johnson, I can't afford no encyclopedia. I priced the Walt Disney encyclopedia. They want $3,000. Really? Well, my mother bought my first one from the thrift store, $20, A through Z, and some extra ones. Go on Amazon, used books, you get a whole set of encyclopedia for $20. You paid $100 for sneakers. So is it really because you can't afford it, or your priorities is messed up? We got all the money for prom night, we got all the money for pictures, we got all the money for class trip, but when it comes to academics, we got all types of excuses. Advice number 2. You get your son evaluated for ADHD, you opened up a door, no return. I just came back from Africa 2 weeks ago. We was in Ghana 2 weeks. We took a group of African Americans who've never been back home. They enjoyed it. We're working on a documentary that we want to put out. We went to the Elmina slave dungeon, Cape Coast slave dungeon, and of course they have the door, no return. The door that our ancestors were shipped through as cattle and they never came back again. Well, ADHD is another type of a door, no return. And for those of you who are interested in going back home to Africa, whether you've been or never been, we're going again next year. Every July, we will be taking a trip to Ghana, West Africa, so you can connect with your roots. Because some of you left your mind in Africa. We're going to go to South Africa for the first 2 weeks in July, and we're going to go to Ghana for the second 2 weeks in July. And Ghana next year, 2015, will be the Panafest Conference. So all Africans from all around the world will be coming to Ghana next July and August. We're taking a trip. So stay in contact with me and you will get that information. The trip this year was $3,200. I don't make any money off of that. Not a single penny goes in my pocket. I intentionally kept the trip cheap because I think too many people who run Africa trips be exploiting y'all. $5,000 and $6,000 for a trip to Africa, that's insane. So our trip was only $3,200. Everything was included except dinner and spending money. Okay? So put that on your calendar. South Africa the first 2 weeks in July, and Ghana the second 2 weeks. But going back to the ADHD door, no return. Let me give y'all some wisdom on this ADHD thing. Ain't no daddy at home disorder. When did we get ADD? 1980. ADHD? 1990. Why? Because in 1980, the United States government started the mass incarceration campaign against black males. They start locking fathers up. And you got a mother at home with a son, but the daddy's in jail for selling narcotics. But guess what we're going to do? We're going to take the same narcotics that got dad locked up, and we're going to give them to his son, so he can sit still long enough to learn about Christopher Columbus and Helen Keller. Do you realize that Ritalin and Adderall, Concerta, Metadate, and Cycler are of the exact same pharmaceutical structure as crack and opium and heroin? Do your research. You don't have to believe me. Anything you hear today, as Mr. Leonard told you, can be validated. Go to the supermarket and get you a prescription drug handbook, American College of Physicians, and look up Ritalin, and look up side effects of Ritalin, and tell me if I'm lying then. In fact, you could go on the website to any of the drugs they give your sons and look up on the website what the side effects are. They even tell you on the website. This drug will kill brain cells. This drug will cause sexual dysfunction problems later in life. This drug will change the structure of your son's blood. This drug will affect his brain's ability to develop. This drug can cause psychosis, schizophrenia, suicidal thoughts, diabetes, heart attack, stroke. You don't have to believe me. Do your own research. And then ask yourself, is this worth me giving to my son for him to have permanent, unchangeable side effects when he grows up because I bought into teacher complaint who had a feminine-based classroom without no outlet for masculine energy? You want to eliminate special ed, you want to eliminate ADHD, you want to eliminate gang banging, because a gang is nothing more than a surrogate family. Why do children join gangs? Because they're looking for a place to call home. That's why they join gangs. The gang gives them everything mommy and daddy ain't giving me. A sense of belonging, identity, protection, time, people to protect me. A gang is a surrogate family. You want to eliminate that? Give every black boy a strong black male teacher. You eliminate half the problems that they talk about in the newspaper every day. Just give them a strong black male teacher. Yes, the teacher has to be competent. Yes, the teacher has to care about the child. But people say, well, what difference does color make? A good teacher is a good teacher. Well, it depends on your definition of education. Because if your definition of education is teaching a child how to read and account, a good teacher is a good teacher, black, white, purple. But if your definition of education is teaching them how to read, count, succeed, and succeed against white supremacy and racism on a daily basis, only a black male can teach them that. See, what is your definition of education? That determines who can teach and who cannot. My first day at school is Monday. I can almost guarantee you the lowest special ed rate in that district. I can almost guarantee you the lowest suspension rate in that district. I can guarantee you 0 expulsions because I know the type of school culture that I'm going to create. But I am invested in those young men because they are me and I am them. Which is why for me, I think it should be illegal for somebody to have the responsibility of educating somebody's child who don't come from the same circumstances that they come from, because they don't earn it, they don't live it, they don't feel it, they don't breathe it. That's why I'm an advocate of black male teachers. But they got to care. Because you do know we got this Willie Lynch thing with us where we hate each other. So I'm not just putting any black man in front of your child. I might put somebody in front of your child who could be the worst racist you've ever met in blackface. I'm serious. I know some black teachers I wouldn't give nobody child to. They hate themselves and hate your child because your child is nothing but a reflection of them. It ain't even personal. But the reason I want you to be careful with the ADHD testing is once you get your child diagnosed with ADHD or conduct disorder or oppositional defiant disorder or disruptive behavior disorder, and you choose not to medicate the child, someone from the school might pick up the phone and call Child Protective Services of Palm Beach County and say, we got a child at Suncoast who was diagnosed with ADHD and the mother refuses to medicate. And we feel this child absolutely needs this medicine to be successful, and now they're knocking on your door. Yes, we want to speak to Mr. and Miss Johnson. Can we help you? Yes, we got a phone call from your child's school, and we need to talk to you because he's been diagnosed with ADHD, and the school feels that he needs the medicine, and you're refusing to medicate. Well, I don't believe in them drugs. We understand that, but if your child has a medical problem, look how they do this now. I just told you ADHD can't be proven. ADHD is somebody's opinion of your child, and that's it. But because you opened the door of no return, you got stuck. If you don't want nobody forcing you to put your child on medicine, then don't put the label on your child. The label is the key that unlocks the door to force medication. You know how many parents I work with whose kids are being taken from them because they refused to give them brain drugs because they were too hard-headed when I said don't get them tested? Well, we just want to see. See what? The boy ain't got no discipline. Teach him. You don't need to see that. And everybody getting paid off the black boys. Psychiatrists getting paid. Psychologists getting paid. Your school district getting paid because every time we put a child in special ed, they get money. I hope y'all know that. That's right. Special ed kids are worth twice as much as regular children. Oh yes, special ed is a hustle. Oh yes. I need some more money in my budget. Let me just go find some poor black kids whose parents ain't gonna even care what we do with them. And I'm gonna make him retarded, I'm gonna make him autistic, he's gonna be speech and language, ADHD, mild mental retardation. That's what they do, and I start adding up the money. That's 7,000 extra, 7,000 extra, 7,000 extra, 7,000 extra. I now got enough money to get my football team new helmets this season. I'm telling you what I know. I'm a principal, most of my friends are principals. Needless to say, I've been an expert witness in many special ed lawsuits. I know what they do. But they can't do it without you parents. That's why I'm here. They can't do it without y'all. You are the catalyst that starts the ball rolling. If you say, no, you're not testing my child, that's it. No, he ain't getting tested for no ADHD. Furthermore, you're a classroom teacher. What are you doing giving me expert mental health advice? Maybe I need to report you to the state chancellor of education and find out why we got teachers at Suncoast who telling parents that kids need pills in order to learn. That's what you're supposed to do. When a teacher tells you your child has ADHD, you report that. Teachers are not allowed to be giving out expert mental health advice. It's illegal. But they do it because you don't do nothing about it. Principals too. I can because I have a doctorate in it. I'm a school psych. I can give that advice. But the average principal is just an educator. They don't know nothing about brain function. But they'll call you in and say, yeah, he needs some Ritalin. Which the Drug Enforcement Agency of America classifies as a Schedule B drug, which means it's in the same category as cocaine and opium. If you don't believe me, go to the library tomorrow. Get the DEA classification of drugs, look up Ritalin and see where it is at, and it's right next to cocaine. And this is what you're giving your son so he can sit still long enough to be miseducated. I'm not blaming the school, I'm blaming you, because nothing we do in schools can be done without your permission, mothers and fathers. Everything we do is with your signature. You're giving permission for them to do what they do to your child. They put my son in special ed, back up. You put your son in special ed. Because unless you're telling me they pick Raheem up and put him in a special ed class without your permission, which means we got a lawsuit, unless that's what you're telling me, you signed permission for them to test that boy. And that's how he ended up in special. Well, they say he got ADHD. He can only get that label with an evaluation. DSM-5. The Bible of mental health. Everything we diagnose, whether it's you or your child, comes out of this book. Bipolar, borderline, schizophrenia, depression, anxiety. Let me say something about depression. A lot of our children are suffering from depression, and it's looking like a learning disability, but it's depression. You and your wife getting a divorce. You don't think your son going to be affected by that? You don't think he's going to go to school and struggle with his work because he's worried about his mommy and daddy, which is far more important than Columbus and the Star Spangled Banner? Your daughter just lost her grandmother who helped raise her. Grandmom died last month, and you expecting her to start school this week and not be affected by the loss of her grandmother? It's not a learning disability. That's adjustment issues. That's a need for grief counseling. Your son is a victim of bullying. Your daughter got self-esteem issues. You don't think that's going to affect how well they do in school? It's not a learning disability. It's a self-esteem issue. My doctoral dissertation was on a relationship between self-esteem and academic achievement. Why did I choose that title? Well, first, because they wouldn't let me do what I really wanted to do, which was misdiagnosis and exploitation of black boys through ADHD by rich white males. That was what I wanted to do. And they said, So I had to pick something sweet and cute to get me out. And so I said, let's do the relationship between self-esteem and academic achievement in middle school African-American children. And what did we find? We found that self-esteem was strongly correlated with academic achievement. And race pride was even stronger. Strongly correlated with academic achievement. How our children feel about themselves is predictive of how well they do in school. So if that's the case, what about a teacher who makes them feel bad about themselves? Is it a learning disability? Or is it a low academic self-concept being brought on by psychological torture by the classroom teacher?
Wow.
See, we don't investigate them things. That's why they don't put me on CNN when they have these education panels. They're going to put bourgeois Negroes up there who they know going to defend the system. It's not the teachers, it's the parents. How about it's the parents and the teachers? Are you aware education is the only field where the professional don't get blamed when they can't do their job? If a surgeon can't perform surgery, it's his fault. If a doctor can't cure, it's his fault. If the therapist can't help you fix your problem, it's their fault. If the mechanic can't fix your car, it's their fault. But when a teacher can't teach, it's the kid's fault. But part of that is we got too many people getting emergency teacher certs in the black community, not because they want to teach black kids, but the economy is in disarray and they need to pay their mortgage. And white privilege says if you have a master's or a bachelor's degree, you can come into the hood and get an emergency cert job and you'll be teaching math even though you can't count your damn self. How many of you in here know whether or not your child's teacher is highly qualified? No Child Left Behind says a highly qualified teacher is a teacher who has a degree, a certification, has passed the test, and have demonstrated the ability to teach. Most of you don't even know. Average black parent never asks the teacher, are you highly qualified according to No Child Left Behind standards? Or even if you don't want to get that technical, do you have a degree and a certification? Not emergency certification, a real certification. You don't even know. Well, Dr. Johnson, why is that important? Why is it important? If the teacher is referring your child for a special ed evaluation to see if he got a math disability and the teacher is not even a trained or certified or credentialed math teacher, how are you going to be sending my child to special ed for math where you don't even know how to teach it? But y'all don't ask them questions in the hood. You dispute anything I say, let it be known. I live this. So number two, if you want to open up the ADHD door, no return, you've been warned by Dr. Johnson. Don't come calling and crying to me 6 months down the road. Oh, you said what you said was right. They trying to take all my kids. I'm telling you how it works. Rule number three, every parent in this auditorium needs to have a notebook. You're supposed to jot down every communication you have with school staff. If the teacher called, write it down. 5 o'clock, Monday, teacher called, said this. The lunchroom aide had a comment about your child, said he did a good job. Write it down. You walk into school, early dismissal, somebody pulls you to the side, I just wanted to let you know that he was out of uniform. Write it down. Notes will save you. But most of y'all don't keep good notes. You think you keep good memory, and you can't. Because memory is colored by emotion and by time. You got to commit it to writing. So if you ever need to take the school district to task, nothing beats a parent who can pull out a log and say, wait a minute now, the first day of school, I have it right here, see? You said that he was allowed to do X, Y, and Z. Oh, I don't recall. You didn't have to recall. I'm recalling for you because it's written. Y'all need to get into the habit of writing everything. The average black parent I work with has nothing on paper. And you know what's even worse? When you call me up and say, Dr. Johnson, my son been in special ed for 8 years and he still can't read. Boom, we got a lawsuit because the law says if you can prove that the school district hasn't properly educated your special needs child, you can make Palm Beach schools pay for your child to go to a private school at district expense. So I'm going to help you get this, right? I'm going to say, okay, I need to see all the evaluations. What grade was your child tested in the first time? Well, he was put in special ed in first grade. Then my second question going to be what? Why are you letting people test your 6-year-old child for special ed? I just told you the diagnoses are not facts, they are opinions. You don't let nobody get in front of no 6-year-old child and tell you they learning disabled at 6. Autism, you can start to see autism at 6, but it's still a diagnosis in progress. Severe, profound mental retardation, you can see signs at 5 or 6. Baby 6 still ain't talking. That could be speech and language. It could be deafness. It could be selective mutism. It could be autism. It could be mental retardation. Yeah, you begin to see signs, but it's still a work in progress. But you don't let nobody tell you a 5, 6, 7-year-old child is ADHD, LD, mild MR, conduct disorder. Are you out of your mind? Whenever I get a request for a child to be tested, under 4th grade, red flag goes up. Because this child hasn't been in school long enough. This child hasn't been in school long enough for me to make a definitive judgment on whether they can learn or not. A lot of this is common sense. You don't need to be no principal, it's just called common sense. If my child is just now starting school, how can you tell me he got a reading disability already? You'd be surprised some of the reports I've seen that y'all sign off on. I said, did you read this? Your child is in kindergarten and they said that he got a reading comprehension disability. You don't learn how to read in kindergarten, you're just learning. Well, they the experts, and this what the teacher said, this what the superintendent said, this what the principal said. Well, let me tell you what I'm saying. You are always the expert on your child. You are always the expert on your child. Never give that to nobody, even me. Dr. Johnson, I feel you, but at the end of the day, go with your gut. Don't go with the teacher's gut. Don't go with the principal's gut, because they got a different agenda. Principal want money, teacher want the child out of his class. Go with your gut. And let your gut be honest. Don't have a financial agenda. So you get $600 for your Social Security income for your so-called disabled child. In the end, you're going to lose, because when that child goes in special ed, the chances of him or her graduating from high school on grade level significantly go down. Did y'all know that? In fact, are you aware that in many states in America now, if the child is in special ed, they do not graduate if they're a part-time or full-time special ed child. If your child is only a pull-out child, they might be okay. But if your child is part-time special ed to full-time, they don't even get a high school diploma no more. They get a certificate of completion, and I know they're doing it in Florida because I done got the emails from parents showing me the certificate. Look, Dr. Johnson, what my child got. That was a photocopy from Staples. The certificate of completion is not a legal document. Did y'all know that? The diploma is a legal document. The certificate of completion is a piece of paper that the principal jazzed all up to give to you on graduation day. And then you say, what is this? This don't say diploma, this say certificate. Yes, well, you know, he was in special ed, and the special ed kids are expected to do as well as the others, and If he can't pass the graduation test, you know he don't get a regular diploma. But my son is special. It doesn't matter. You didn't hear that they changed the rule on that? Well, why didn't you tell me? Oh, I'm sorry. That's your responsibility as a parent to know what's going on with your child. Oh, I got hit with a couple of them this year. Parents calling me from all around America. Doc, can you help me? My son ain't got no diploma. I found out on graduation day, he don't get a diploma. I said, remember I told you, don't put that boy in special ed. He didn't need it. Make his ass work. And you took the easy way out. Now the boy jammed up. What you gonna do with a certificate of completion? Nothing. Next piece of advice, get a copy of your child's academic record at least once every 3 years. Get a copy of your child's complete academic record. What law allows you to do this? FERPA 1974. What does FERPA stand for? F-E-R-P-A. The Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act of 1974. Now, I see some of you parents not writing. Don't call me later. Should be writing. You come to my thing, you're getting information. You need to be writing. Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act of 1974 says every child has a right to a copy of the child's educational record. Parents, did y'all hear that? You should always get a copy of the record before you transfer your child to another school. Why? Let's say you apply to my school, Frederick Douglass Marcus Garvey. I asked for a complete copy of the record, right? I get some stuff on your son in that record that says he beat up a teacher, threw a chair out the window, kicked the principal down the steps. Damn. I said, I don't know if I want him. And then I talk to you and you say, Dr. Johnson, he didn't throw the chair out the window. He simply pushed it. Well, it says he threw it. My son did not throw the chair. But you never knew that that's how they wrote it out. Don't you know teachers love to exaggerate what your child actually did? It will make that boy look like a damn menace when he not. You know this, don't you? But when's the last time you got a complete copy of your child's record to see what they put in it? Your child is about to go from middle school, you want to get him into a special charter school, a special high school, and you ain't looked at his record? What you don't know might keep him out of that school. And if you look at the record and see something you don't like, the law allows you to challenge. The law allows you to challenge and have removed anything in the record you don't think is sufficient. What's another rule? Expulsion. Whenever your child is brought up for expulsion, make sure the reason they're being expelled is actually legal. A lot of our kids are being kicked out of school districts for reasons that ain't even expellable, but because you don't know the law, they got away with it. First thing you do when they say your child is expelled is do what? Go to the school district code of conduct and look in there and see if expulsion is listed as an expellable, what they did is listed as an expellable offense. If it's not, they can't expel because that's not expellable. He might get suspended, but he can't be expelled. Let me give you a true scenario. Father in Indianapolis, Indiana. He called me up, Dr. Johnson, my son is a straight A kid, highest test scores in the school. They want to expel my son because he wrote his name in the concrete outside of the school building. They said that was defacing school property. I said, first thing I need you to do is do some research to see if any child has ever been expelled for writing their name in the concrete. Because if we find another kid who wrote their name in the concrete and never been expelled, the case is over. Because what they're doing is they're using bias to select who they're going to expel. Can't do that. So he said, we ain't really find no cases. Then the next question I said was, does it say specifically writing your name in the concrete will get you expelled? He said, no. I said, where exactly did your son write his name? Was it inside the school or was it outside the school? And he said, outside the school yard. Well, if you wrote your name outside the schoolyard, that's not school property. That's city property. They can expel you for something you did in the city. He took that to the school board and they threw out the expulsion. See that? All he had to do was find some information and present it to the board. That saved his son's academic career. Y'all have to do the same thing. In closing, Friday night I will be in Miami at the Chroma Gallery. Chauncey, where you at?
Right here.
You can see Brother Chauncey, he'll give you the information. Friday night, we're going to be watching Hidden Colors 3. And then there's going to be a Q&A session after Hidden Colors. Okay? 6 to 9 at the Chroma Gallery. Get the information from Brother Chauncey. Or you can text my phone number that I'm going to give you now as we conclude. So take out a pen or your cell phone so you can take my number in case you need to text me for the flyer. Saturday, we will be back in Miami for a back-to-school festival. Bring the children. Saturday, 3 to 6. What's the name of the church?
Greater St. Paul AME Church.
Greater St. Paul AME Church. Greater St. Paul AME Church, Saturday, 3 to 6. Back-to-school fest. Bring the children. And I'll be speaking at that time and going more in depth with the information that I shared. Do we have a few minutes for questions?
No, we don't.
Okay.
Probably just one or two, but we have to make it very short.
I'll take 2 because we only have the building until 8. Any questions or everybody straight? Queen.
Stated 5, said it was 10 commandments you gave us.
I only gave you 5 for the sake of school, for the sake of time. We're going to finish the other 5 in Miami. That was cute advertising. Okay. So in conclusion, one more. Yes, sir. What percentage of the police force is college grads? That depends on the police force. But we've seen over the past 10 years, the percentage of police who have college degrees have grown up because they can't get jobs in other places. So a lot of them have college degrees. But that doesn't cut down on the racism or the abuse. Okay, I'll let Mr. Leonard close on out. Phone number. See, I got ADHD. My daddy was home though. 215-989-9858. 215-989-9858 is my cell. I prefer you text me because I never answer calls. Text me. Email drumarjohnson@yahoo.com. Website drumarjohnson.com. School website where I want everybody to make a donation. We trying to get that 2 million to give our boys the school that they need. Free from racism, free from special ed, free from ADHD, free from Ritalin, free from psychological abuse, free from suspension, free from expulsion. Their website is drumarjohnsonschool.com. DRUMAR johnsonschool.com. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You can get me at Dr. Umar Johnson. You can also link directly in from the websites. So with that, we want to, yes?
Tell the group why you think that the gangs hide in the daytime and ride in the nighttime.
Because you can be seen in the daytime. So the gangs don't want to be out in the day.
Okay.
Under the cover of night. They're like with the cops. They commit most of their crime in the evening because you got the benefit of the cover of darkness. But we're going to try to do a gang conference too, maybe in the spring, get all the young brothers who gang banging it on the corners, get them in here and talk to them because they still our babies and they only 2 steps away from being saved, and we can't give up on none of our children. And don't let the police or the media or the school district or anyone else convince you that our children cannot be saved. They can always be saved. All right, and with that, we're going to let Mr. Leonard close out on the mic. And when we're done, if you want to come up and grab something off the merchandise table, if you got a question, we got a few minutes for that, but we're going to start making our way out of the building.
Yeah. Now you see why. Give me a hand, please. Now you see why that graduate class from the University of Chicago waited so patiently for Dr. Umar Johnson to come in and do what he had to do in his discourse, because he gives very, very clear facts. That's what I like about his research. It's factual driven. Those of you who are in graduate school, those who plan to go to graduate school, those who plan to go to college, he would be an excellent person to expound because he gives you facts. He teaches will teach you how to do research. Now we're going to ask you very, very quickly to sign the law because we're going to do this again in October. And I want to try to bring him back because I want to get in-service points to teachers, especially those persons who are in graduate school, to listen to him and try to get some in-service points for you, even college credit. So please sign the sheet every time I bring him back. Yes, sir.
No,
Yes.
the sheet's here, pen here, on the back of it, sign
I need
it.
your name, address, and your email, so when as we get toward coming, you're not my base, you're my base now. And I hope many of you have enjoyed what you've heard. How many of you enjoyed what you heard? Raise your hand, please.
We also make sure you're on that email list because we're still in the process of organizing the Palm Beach County Independent Black Parent Association. And we want all y'all to be a part of that association, 6-7 committee, special ed committee, school discipline committee, school finance committee, school policy committee, social committee, homeschool committee, and parent advocacy committee. We have to organize to protect our children until such time that we have our own schools. The goal is our own schools. But until we get there, we got to fight and protect them where they are. We're not involved in the schools enough. So make sure you sign the list so we can email you and let you know how you can help out with the Parent Association.
Because I get calls all the time at the Black Educators Caucus office located on Rosemary, 401 Rosemary. I have cards, 401 Rosemary. Those of you who want to become an associate member of the Black Educators Caucus, I will recognize your application and I will make you part of that. There is a problem. I have brought Dr. Umar Johnson back. I was the first to bring him in Palm Beach County. And there are some theorists with whom I have dealt with don't agree with some of his sayings. You know why? Because it's base-founded. When you tell the truth, which was said in the radio when I was the radio station manager, you can't hide the truth. And what he says is factual. You can look it up. You can research it. What he's given us tonight, I have seen many students, being an administrative assistant principal, I've seen many students come down to my office. I got to take they love to say it, I got to take my pill. They say it, they love to say that, even little kids, I got to take my pill. Or I didn't take my pill today. What does that mean? Because when I was growing up, we didn't have any pills. All my father had to do was just look back. If I was in church, all I had to do was turn his head and look. Give you that look, and you knew if that look was not one of fairness, when you got home, oh boy, it was on. As people say, oh, black leg bones. And he was a big guy. He didn't play the radio either. Because when he said, went in this house, and he said, I never forget, I was 13 years old. And I was bad, too, because I lived on 8th and Sapodilla. Bad. You know what's 8th and Sapodilla is, don't you know? I was bad. I was roll ties down the street and running from the taxi cabs and get in the car and pull out a gear, ran to the Patterson store. I was bad. I grew up in the hood. I was bad. Beat people up. We would jump on somebody and beat them up. And he told me one time, at 13 years old, he said, let me tell you something. In this house, you will be a gentleman and a scholar. And I said, you know how you sometimes you hear people saying something, you shuck your head. I was like, oh man, what in the world would I do that for? That man grabbed me by my neck. I thought he was a RoboCop. He threw me down. He told my mom, oh, he said, get back. I'm handling him right now. He'll never shirk me again. And I didn't do it, and I'm 63 years old. And my dad is still living. I would never ever. I told my regular brother one time, I said, you better watch that man. That man hurt you. He didn't believe me. He got a taste of it too. But things have changed, so we have to go with the times. Because, we have to go with the times. And I'm so glad to have Dr. Umar Johnson on the scene, not bourgeois, down to earth, telling you how it is. You may not like what he tells you, but he's going to tell you the truth. And I will continue to bring him back here long after forward. Because he tells us the truth. Next time I bring him back, I want him to meet with parents. Talk with parents. Just get some things going with some parents. But make sure you sign for this. And I hope that it'll be sometime in October. We'll get the word out. And thank you for coming this evening. Make sure you sign for this. Please give him a hand again. I want to take time 12 and the radio station will put the word out for me. Nice crowd. I want you to come up and get this book, get some of the
And one last thing, sorry to interrupt, Mr. Leonard. If you got a cell phone, I want you to join my text message club. It's free. You get regular updates from me. You want to open up your phone, new text message, and you want to text Dr. Umar, D-R-U-M-A-R, all capitals, Dr. Umar to 36,000. 36000 is the recipient. D-R-U-M-A-R is the message. Hit send, and it'll send you automated registry thing. You got to type like a capital Y, and then you're automatically in, and you'll get regular updates from me. It doesn't cost on your bill. I'll pay for it, not you, so use it.
Come on and get one of the books, t-shirts, or whatever you need to get. Let's do. Listen out for him in October, and have a good evening. Thank you so much.